Welcome to the State of the Nation webinar. I'm Michael Sham, and we're in for a treat today. Our favorite politician, South Africa's most accessible and successful politician of recent times, is with us today. We used to call him a businessman, but now he is a proper politician. Welcome to Mr. Herman Mashaba, leader of ActionSA.
Thank you so much, Mike, and really what a great pleasure always coming to talk to you.
And of course, you didn't come alone today. You have brought your new recruit, the man who looks quite good in green, Mr. Bongani Baloyi.
Thank you.
Bongani, welcome. It's great to have you here.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So let's get straight into this. Firstly, we'll looking back is only a month or two ago. We had you here just prior to the local government elections. It was a wonderful interview. It went viral. We talked very straight to one another. We got things on record. People liked what they heard, and you did fantastically well in the areas that you contested. So well done in the local government election.
No, thank you to South Africans to positively respond to my plea to all of us help and work together to fix South Africa, because our project is actually a project to save South Africa. I remember just yesterday I had a meeting with someone who was saying, you know, Herman, I look at what you are doing. As much as you can call ActionSA a political party, ActionSA is a movement to fix this country that is in big trouble. And I'm really grateful to South Africans that are responding to this. I think they make it worth my while. When I left my successful business career, I don't enjoy the privileges of being a businessman, travel the world, when play golf. My family life is suffering very badly. But at the end of the day, I think it's something that has got to be done. Someone has got to do it. So I'm using my privileged position. One day when I'm dead, I can say, and my children and my grandchildren can say, you know what, my grandfather tried.
And he made a difference.
Absolutely.
And I think, and we're going to not spend too long on what happened last year, but I think it's important that we just deal with it. And I think one of the heartening things that came out of the election of last year, I know this may sound a little bit strange, but you'll get the logic in a minute, was that it didn't come at the expense, percentage-wise, from the Democratic Alliance. There was always the danger that any gain you made would be at the expense of the other opposition parties. The other opposition parties seemed to hold their level of support while your party grew. That could only have come from non-voters or former ANC voters.
I think if you look at this movement from inception with the People's Dialogue, we targeted non-voters. And that's what we're going to do even going towards 2024. The market is wide open. Honestly, it's fertile ground. If you look at the voter turnout the last time, in fact, for me, it's becoming a great opportunity, because we need to bring these masses back into the political field for them to realize that they are not what they've been told all along, that they are nobody, or people feeling that their vote doesn't count. We're going to be spending our resources and our energies in educating them to understand that your vote counts. And look at what we've done. We're the only political party we challenge anyone. The information is available with IEC. We're the only party since 1994. Not even ANC in 1994 had a spread of South Africans, because ActionSA received the same support in Soweto than we received in Waterkloof or in Sandton or in Alexander or in Lenasia or Lodium or El Dorado Park. We're the only party in this country that is actually a true representation of South Africans. As you remember, we can go into our website. One of our first core values is a non-racial South Africa. I'm here to fight to create a non-racial South Africa. It hurts me that I lived more than half of my life under an oppressive, evil system. And 1994, I thought with Nelson Mandela, particularly Desmond Tutu, who came out with this concept of a rainbow nation, which actually caught the world by surprise. today is sad for me to see us, we are more divided than we were pre-1994. But this movement called ActionSA has demonstrated in electoral reform. Ours is not an ideological dream of a non-racial South Africa. We are a truly non-racial South African movement or political party or whatever you want to call it.
Well, obviously South Africa has got probably the best example of the birth of a political party throwing away whatever advantage they could have had, and that was with the advent of COPE, right, which came from nowhere and racked up nearly 10% of the national vote, and then descended into internal fighting. You seem to have done it the other way around, and much credit must go to yourself. But let's move forward. Here we are, 2022, and to your right is the ex-mayor of Midvaal, Bongani Baloyi. Welcome to this forum, and interesting move away from the Democratic Alliance. And here you are working with Mr. Mashaba on this exciting project. It must be very exciting to you.
Absolutely. I think I've been overwhelmed by the positive messages and amount of people from across racial lines who want to join ActionSA. So I think for me, it's a further confirmation that this is the right path, this is the right party, and a perfect fit that fits with the aspirations of many South Africans. And I think for a change, you've got South Africans who are mobilizing and starting to get attracted to a particular vehicle, not as a consequence of let's vote out so and so, but rather we are enthused by what you stand for, and it's a vote for ActionSA.
I want to pick up on that because it would appear that one of the dangers, especially given your political roots in both instances, that is there not a danger of ActionSA? You seem to spend a lot of time DA bashing, specifically Helen Ziller, who's been on this platform before, and she's very capable of defending herself. But at what point does the DA bashing stop and the growth of ActionSA begin, Herman?
Well, I think, for us, we've made it clear from day one, we're not in the business of bashing anyone. We're in the business of confronting reality. You bash at us. I've learned throughout my life. When you talk to me in Greek, I'm going to respond in Greek. And that's how I can communicate with people. So don't expect that you're going to speak to me in Chinese and I'm going to respond to you in Shanghai. No. If you speak to me in Chinese, I can tell you for you to really understand, I'm going to come back to talk to you in Chinese. Because, Mike, you must understand how human beings operate. And unfortunately, majority of people all over the world are gullible of what they hear. People are interested in bad news and so forth. So for me, I think I look at what is unfortunate about South Africa, that people have been lied to for many years. That's why people are staying away from politics. And obviously, also doesn't only happen in South Africa. Yeah. It happens in the United States, in other parts of the world, democratic the world. But you see, in the United States, actually, they survive better when politicians are out of the way, because their democratic administrative system, it's so strong that they don't need politicians. The less politicians you have passing laws, the better America becomes. Whereas in our particular case, we've destroyed the administrative capacity and relied on the lies of the politicians. So we need to really remove ANC from government as a case and really start the journey of bringing professional South Africans to run government, because that's what we want. That's a day when we can obviously, as we mature as a democracy, we can start dealing with reality, because these politicians that think they can just insult us, that Bongani makes a mistake, he's going to regret joining ActionSA. Oh, Bongani is a grown-up man. He can decide for him. Does not need anybody to really decide for him.
So I suppose the message you're getting across is when they pitch up with a knife, you're going to pull out a gun.
Absolutely. I'm going to put out a bomb. I'm going to respond with a bomb.
Now, if we look back, and this will be the last issue on pertaining to some of the if you want to call it the older political issues. You did something that I thought didn't get as much attention as it deserved, was the signing of the coalition agreement in December, right? So can we view the from time to time words that you may have with, for example, Helen Zille and the DA, as almost a fight amongst friends, almost like, you know, two siblings fighting, but the objective remains the same, and that is a South Africa that is free of the ANC.
One thing that I really want to give a unqualified commitment to the people of South Africa. We committed to this coalition government. We've got to keep ANC out. That's what
Yes.
got me into politics. That's the reason why when the DA wanted to give these municipalities to the DA, I fought it. And I made it possible strategically to force the DA to take over this government, negotiated with them, and made sure that we've got signed agreements. But at the same time, we've got some issues that we need to really address, because it appears to me that some of us are not really committed to ensuring that we can run stable 5-year governments. Because I think for South Africans need to really be taught to understand the 3 levels of government: local, provincial, and national government. At local government level, I don't have to really agree with your overall
Stance.
ideological difference. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't care. I don't care whether we agree on
pothole in
land
the road doesn't care.
expropriation or the expropriation of banks and so forth. I'm a declared capitalist. I love the capitalist system, but at local government level, I'll work with anyone. As long as we agree on the budget, let's put the budget together that we can pass through government, make sure that we hold one another accountable to make sure that we deliver for the residents. We give them safety. We make sure that they have clean drinking water every day. Their streets are clean and so forth and so forth. I don't have to really be your friend. I don't have to agree with your ideological differences, because that is not the space for local government. Is not a space for that. Yes, at national government, that's where obviously the difficulty will be, and we need to prepare ourselves as South Africans, because for any one party to get outright majority at the moment, it looks like still a far-fetched dream. Obviously, I think we would prefer to get outright majority, but realistically, is it possible? I think we leave it to the voters to really decide. So we've got to get our mindset ready to run these municipalities, to really demonstrate that we are prepared as South Africans to work together in the interest of society. But we are experiencing some challenges, and I hope that we are going to be men and women, adults, and not actually mislead society around our differences. Though, one thing for sure for us as ActionSA, and I'll tell you why. The only party I will not work with is the ANC. It's because of the level of corruption. If you look at the ANC, the thing is, you go into a coalition arrangement in any municipality in South Africa with the ANC. Now, their level of corruption. So the only way that means you've got to get them to cooperate, you've got to hide corruption. So that's something that, for me, makes it really very difficult and sad. But the reality is that, honestly, I'm not really prepared to compromise myself to that level.
And it must make some of your decision-making quite simple, because you know what you can at least know what you're not going to be doing, or who you won't speak to. But you were talking about local government, and the person who, over the last decade, became the poster child for delivery of local government services was Bongani. Bongani, you did a magnificent job at Midvaal. Well done. It was acknowledged around the country, in some cases with a bit more enthusiasm than in other cases. What did you do right in Midvaal?
It's an open secret. I just did my job. So and that job was really to as the executive mayor in Midvaal, to be able to give strategic direction, clarify and crystallize a vision for the municipality, and create a conducive environment where everybody who's working in the institution protects the governance mechanism in the institution. Because if you don't have good governance, we can't have the outputs that we're having, which is clean streets, safer communities, potable water, electricity, and sanitation. So we really refined our delivery mechanism and methodology. We simplified it, understood what it is, our core business is, and stuck to that. And I also think the part of the success for us was the active citizenry in Midvaal. It was really committed in holding us accountable and traveled a long journey with us. They didn't just elect us and say, we'll see you in 5 years' time. But every time we're engaging with communities, they were really asking key questions about performance, key questions about delivery, and what we promised as well. So I really think a combination of a competent civil service, which we fortunately had. I think I had probably one of the best civil services in the country that really was able to do their work in a conducive environment we had created, where politicians understood what their role was and what the role of civil servants is. And we never meddled the two. So there was a full appreciation of that.
And of course, one of the things that I feel doesn't get mentioned enough about your performance in Midvaal was that it led directly to economic investment in the area, right? I think the biggest project, as far as I know, because clearly some of the media didn't really want to report it as blatantly as it seemed to me, was the big investment in the Heineken brewery in the Midvaal, which they even admitted at the time was because they wanted to be in Gauteng, and this was the only place in Gauteng that they could see that it would work in.
Absolutely. I think in the Heineken story, a part of the story that's never told is how Heineken initially engaged Ekurhuleni. But in, I think, about 4 months, they couldn't get a decision about things they needed to, and a commitment. And Midvaal then was able to give them decisions in a stipulated period of time, including agreeing to sign a contract which cleared timelines, which had punitive clauses as well, that if a decision is not given by this point in time, it has the following punitive clause. Because we had an appreciation that these people are going into the capital market to take money in a particular currency, move it to South Africa. So any delay in their money getting to the ground and them doing the business that they need is going to affect everybody. So we had that understanding in mind. We wanted to remove obstacles for business and for them just to do their work. And the best part of attracting business is just doing your work first. There must be reliability of infrastructure as a primary precondition, reliability of water, and communities which will not frustrate that. And that's the part we really worked hard with communities who understood they're the main beneficiaries. And look what Heineken started as the anchor business. Look what's happened around Heineken. Their value chain has moved closer towards them. They are investing, and I think they're quite aggressive towards the African market now. And they want a big share of the South African market as well, competing with SAB, which is good for us in Midvaal. So I think it's really good. The value chain is exciting to me because I see how my people are participating in the value chain of Heineken, which are really, for me, Heineken in Midvaal has been the ideal and model corporate citizen, with how they've engaged with the public sector, the initiatives they've put in place, and how when we've got challenges in some of the infrastructure issues, we used to tap on their shoulder, and without batting an eye, they'd actually come on board and assist us.
Well, yeah, to me, that's the kind of story that South Africans need to hear, a lot more than letters questioning the makeup of the judiciary or people's struggle credentials, because that's where the rubber meets what used to be the road, right? In some cases,
the rubber meets the gravel.
Where the rubber hits the pothole, and that is the political leadership making it possible for the economic leadership to grow the economy, which is so desperately needed. I want to just pick up on one of the things that Herman said. We begun today, and you said it before on this platform, that ActionSA stands against racial policy. Now, I have seen interviews with you, Bongani, and certainly in your Dear John letter. I like that, the Dear John letter. You get that? I hope you all get that.
Yeah.
To the Democratic Alliance. One of the reasons that you seemed to give was that you felt that they weren't strongly behind BEE.
Let me clarify. Yeah. So when you speak economic policy, you ask the question, what are you trying to remedy? So you don't write an economic policy without appreciation of your reality. So when you start from your reality, you also say, what is the South African reality in terms of economics? Who is where and how? Because an economic policy must address how you take someone from point A to point B. So when then you say, when it's difficult for you to make an admission that the majority of people who are in the worst of situation is black people, for me there's an issue, then you prefer to call it poverty. So we must also not be shy about calling a cat a black cat if it's a black cat. So to try and massage it with these words and not use reality to try and deal with that, and attempt to write an economic policy from the perspective of general Millennium Development Goals perspective and what's happening across the world, for me, it's something I can't reconcile my views with. So even though in an economic policy of ActionSA, I don't agree with BEE, because what has BEE done, right? So BEE has given those who have proximity to power more, and shareholding, etc., etc. In terms of the BEE scorecard, which is the most part people look at, they only look at the shareholding component and forget the downstream beneficiation of things like enterprise development, etc., etc. So we need to come up with our own alternative, right? And in our own alternative and the space that we need to travel with ActionSA, there's a commitment to redress in this country. For me, that's fundamental. So there must be an unquestionable commitment to redress, which gives us a space as we engage in policy to reflect on the reality of South Africans and to appreciate that, one, there's a central question about what do you do with women empowerment, particularly. So we've been speaking just general black people, but there's also a question about women who are the most underprivileged. And I mean, where I was the mayor, I saw the impact unemployment does on women in particular. And that's why I came up with a scheme called Sebenza Mbogoto, which was a loan scheme of 0% interest for informal female traders. And I saw the impact it had on their lives. So we need to dig deeper. But then you see ActionSA doesn't have the limitations of ideology to say, because we are classical this and you are this, you can't get into a discussion about those spaces without being branded a particular thing. So for me, I think that puts it in perspective. And a South African reality, me and Herman share that. It's a reality we both understand that come from a similar type of background, even though the times may have been different, but it's the same type of reality. And coming from that point of reality informs a better policy, and a policy that's not just an aloof policy, but a policy that appreciates the reality of South Africans and can take South Africans from point A to point B.
Do you not think that a greater reality in South Africa is the lack of economic growth, right?
Absolutely. Can I just come here, Michael, to really clarify your question and Bongani's response? I think the mistake that people tend to really make when they say, I'm against BE. Yes, I'm against the ANC BE, but I'm for redress. We are the most unequal society in the world. When I have a political party, when I want to go and provide toilets, where the ANC government has failed for the last 20 years, to give people basic sanitation. I want to go and provide and then you tell me, no, I cannot take your residents' money, taxpayers, when provide services to people who don't pay tax. I think for me, it's a deep hit for me. That does not really mean that you cannot really see me. Musi used to say to the DA and all those criticism says, if you don't see that I'm black, then I think something is wrong with me. I'm saying is, I think, unfortunately enough, majority of white and black South Africans agree with us. The ANC does not work. It was just a pie in the sky. That we need redress. How do we need redress? We need economic growth.
Yes.
And how do we get economic growth? Allow South Africans who are operating legally to operate and make money as much as they turn them into trillionaires, not billionaires. Tax them properly, make sure that you invest in schools so that 25 years down the line, you don't have 74% youth unemployment. You have literally no unemployment of the youth. You've got them as engineers, as teachers, as policemen and women, as accountants and so forth. You build the best schools in the townships, in Soweto, in Alexander, where there were no opportunities in the past. So we don't have to take this money and give it to me because I'm politically connected. You make me a billionaire. No, that is not empowerment. Let's allow government to make sure that we build the best schools, the best clinics, get the best doctors to make sure that the health of people of Alexander is taken care of. But you cannot really then tell me I cannot take that money that I'm taking from a certain community, go and spend it to people who are victims of not only ANC's 28-year looting. It's the victims of 300 years of colonialism, apartheid. So let's work together as a country. But what is fundamental for us to achieve that social justice? Is the economy, nothing else.
Yes.
You can talk and do as you want. No one is going to invest in your country if you've got policies like BE. No one is going to.
And nobody's going to invest if you don't have economic growth.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you've got the young black guy to your right nodding furiously and the old white guy to your left nodding furiously to those points. So there's got to be a reality as well in South Africa that if we assume, given the fact that South Africa is a very unequal environment, is that I think there's only people out there that lie to themselves. Any white person who wants a job in South Africa has got a job. I think it's safe to say, right? You know, somebody will trot out at the good old white braai. Oh, I know somebody who can't get a job. I know that guy and he's useless and he's not really trying and he doesn't add value and he's been fired from 10 jobs, right? And it's all very well to look at that person sadly. But the stats don't lie. There's a very high employment rate amongst whites. They'll take you to a squatter camp of a few hundred people, which in the scheme of things is statistically insignificant. Any growth we have in this country will directly benefit other communities, especially the black community, because that's where
because
the pool
of our
talent.
numbers, the economic growth by nature, because of our sheer numbers as black people, we are going to be the biggest beneficiaries.
Absolutely.
We don't have enough white people to occupy
all these
positions.
We all employed anyway.
Because the economic growth is going to require the people. But what we need to do is we've got to invest in education so that black people are qualified to do the job. Don't just employ them to be government relations.
Exactly.
No, we want black people to really be engineers, to be accountants in your businesses, not to really be the stakeholder relations. Their role is to go and negotiate with this corrupt ANC government to get to tenders. That is not empowerment.
It's not business.
It's not business.
It's not business. Business is making things, creating things and selling them, which brings us, of course, to a very thorny issue where you've been clear on, right, from inception. And that is that, to me, there's two issues and the one masks the other. There is your policy of saying that people who are illegally in the country are lawbreakers.
It's very
criminals. Simple.
Anyone who is in South Africa illegally is a criminal.
Yeah.
He's broken our laws.
And when that gets mentioned by you or whomever, and we're going to get to that part next, immediately there's that X that gets thrown at you, xenophobia, right? Whereas in this case, we are talking about applying the laws of the land. Now, this has become a policy which obviously the ANC just says nothing on, right?
They reported me to the Human Rights Commission when I first raised it in 2016.
Right, so we know, we don't know where they stand because we don't.
They support lawlessness.
Well, they're
anarchy.
supported by their lack of actions.
By their actions, or the lack of the inaction, but they support it.
And which sort of brings to question whether they are serious about implementing the Constitution or not. But now this has become a popular trick, and we know it's popular whenever the EFF and their ragtag bunch gets on the horse. Now, suddenly they become the Labour Department. What's your view on Julius Malema going door to door in the Mall of Africa, telling people to fire waiters and cooks?
I think I just cannot understand how South Africans can not embrace this constitutional democracy that's available to us to change laws that we agree with, laws that we don't agree with. We don't have to really go and ban our clinics when we don't get services from government. We don't have to go and ban our schools when we're not happy with the NG Motshega and Bladen Mande. What we do is we remove government. That's really what South Africans are missing on. When we have this failing immigration system, as per our constitution, the constitution of South Africa, very clear who must come into South Africa, that no one should come into this country without having the necessary documentation. As soon as you come here for some reason, you are running away from Mugabe's, you come to South Africa or from Pakistan. If ever you end up in South Africa without the documentation, you must be immediate. We have to have Home Affairs that can immediately get hold of you to assess whether you qualify or not. If you qualify, they must immediately obviously make sure that they give you the necessary documentation to be in South Africa. But if you are here for wrong reasons or for criminal intent, the constitution is very clear. This person must be immediately deported back to their country. So I fail to understand some of the people who are supporting ANC lawlessness, and they think they're trying to be politically correct. But one thing that I've realized, people who are obviously critical outside the ANC, because ANC is a beneficiary of this lawlessness. But then obviously they have their foot soldiers, professors, analysts, journalists, and so forth. What do they do? They benefit out of this chaos. And I think for me, to some extent, it looks like, and I think it's not a problem that is actually not faced only in South Africa. It looks like anywhere where black people are in the world, the only way you can keep them down is to make them perpetual victims. So it looks like there are professional people. Their job is to make sure that black people have a slave mentality, victim mentality. And that's something that I find totally unacceptable, because these people are not coming out quite clear and direct. What they do this in the name of saying, no, Mike, as a black person, every time Mike does something, says, no, Mike, it's not your fault. It's because of whatever, you're a victim. Yes. And I tell you, that's something that for me as a black person, I'm going to fight. I'm not going to let anyone, you speak to me in Chinese, I'm going to tell you I'm going to respond in Chinese, because I'm not going to allow anyone to get black people to understand, to think that they are victims. We are not victims. We are victims of history, but we are not victims of our future. We have got a responsibility to understand. We must never forget where we come from, but that is not going to hold me back. I've got to say to myself, and I want to say to other black people, we've come from an evil system, but we're going to come victorious. Let us not allow people to tell us that we are perpetual victims.
Yeah, and I think for me, just to add on to what Herman is saying, a point that we don't really get to speak about in this whole discourse of what is perceived as xenophobia for raising what or any sensible South African should be raising and questioning themselves about. So we're not saying foreigners must not come into the country, but you have to go through the system correctly. So whenever you travel anywhere in the world, you have to present your passport, where you're going, what you're doing, and when you are leaving. Those are basic things. So we must also insist upon the same things. And we must also insist on the government of South Africa, while they're still in government for the next 2 years, that they must toughen up on their foreign relations. I mean, we need to hear our government speaking up for South Africans. This cushy relationship they have with Mnangagwa and not saying anything. The only country in SADC that has been decisive on Zimbabwe has been Botswana historically. We have allowed for things to happen with quiet diplomacy in SADC. So we must really impress on the South African government to take a firm position, a very public position, which they speak to their counterparts and tell them straight that they mustn't allow their problems to come South Africa and become our problems.
Just to correct you there, we didn't have a policy of quiet diplomacy. We had policy of silent diplomacy. In actual fact, it was more like a policy of outright support.
Yeah, but how do you expect me to really keep quiet when people will have heroes acres and heroes celebration for a guy like Mugabe?
Yeah.
No, Mugabe doesn't really represent me.
Now, both of you two gentlemen were mayors within a stone's throw of where we are right now. And there's another issue that's kind of linked to lawlessness and even to a degree to xenophobia. And that is something that there's a very easy way to palm this off, and it's to blame white people because we want to apply laws, but they're laws. Where do we stand on informal trading? I am now completely confused. I mean, there's obviously in the last decade, we've seen a complete, there was a time when you were trying it as mayor of Johannesburg and picked up a world of trouble when you tried to stop certain informal trading. I remember there was the cowhead incident. We're not going to, anybody wants to see something stupid, go look at that, where Herman was castigated for applying basic laws, which was probably saving lives.
With massive health risk to the country. I mean, I'm a committed, unapologetic capitalist, but we cannot do it at the risk of our people. I don't know if you've seen a few days ago the full the school kids who ate sweets from one of those shopkeepers, admitted in hospital.
Yeah.
I mean, must we allow, is this trading? They're selling expired goods. You know, I don't know if you're aware, South Africa is the epicenter of counterfeit goods. I don't know who collects counterfeit goods from all over the world. They bring them into the country. They don't pay taxes on them because obviously they bribe the officials. They are sold not here in Sandton and other places. Where do they land? They land in Alexander and so forth, and the poor communities. And people are expecting us to keep quiet. When we raise this, they call us xenophobia. Honestly, you know what? Continue calling us xenophobia. We are going to ensure that the lives of those people matter, because I've heard over the last few years people talk about Black Lives Matter. For me, lives matter. And the lives of those kids who I hope they're out of hospital, they're out there, one thing I want people to know, their lives matter. The people who are going to eat that cow's head, that in the heat of Johannesburg, been driven, been pushed on a wheelbarrow, being sold to an innocent person who's unemployed, or someone living on 150 rand that Cyril Ramaphosa gives them, because that's the only thing that they can afford. And we must keep quiet, because someone can afford to really go to one of the best restaurants and spend 10,000 rands on a bottle of wine. For them, they say, no, Mashaba is xenophobia. It's xenophobic. You know what? Call me anything. In fact, I encourage people to bring this to the attention of, let's talk about this every hour. Let's have the debate until such time that the ANC government can take responsibility. But fortunate enough, 2024 is around the corner. We are going to remove them from power.
And look, just to tighten up the position, we support informal trading. Informal trading plays a subservient role in the formalized economy and plays a big one. Just go stand by Joburg Fresh Produce in the morning, and in the evening you'll see the type of impact the informal trading plays in the farming. But it has to be regulated. There has to be basic norms and standards, and there has to be a designated place for it. It just can't happen all over the place. So you can't have every street corner becoming a market. It does not make sense. So we need to regulate it. And I'm quite pleased with the process I think City of Johannesburg is doing now, with the going through the policy of informal traders, because they recognize it's such an important thing. So I think it has to be regulated, it has to be in a designated space, and there has to be some basic norms about where you do it and how you do it, because it plays a very important role within playing subservient as a secondary market to whichever primary, either manufacturing, but largely agriculture. So it plays a very important role.
And you mentioned the city of Johannesburg, and I think we have to at this time. Just give us a health check. I think, like most people, we are confused as to where these metros lie at the moment. We understand that we've got the mayors in place, we've got some of the committees that have been selected, and we've got the ANC and the EFF practicing their dance moves. Is this stopping service delivery, or what is the state of play within?
Without any doubt, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand that if you don't have an effective council, because obviously council is the one that lays the foundation and the marching orders for the administration. So if a council is dysfunctional, without any doubt, it's going to impact on the administration, because the administration, their role is to implement policies approved by council. So if council doesn't function, there's just no way that you can have a functioning administration. That's a fact of life, whether we like it or not. And unfortunately, for society to allow politicians not to discharge their responsibilities when they voted them into power, then they must accept the consequences.
And so are we suggesting that as we sit at the moment, there's still dysfunction within these coalition metros?
I can tell you, look at Ekurhuleni. Right now, as a multi-party government, we don't have majority there. So that government can collapse any minute now. It's at the whim of its survival is dependent on the ANC and EFF, what side of the bed they were born. So that municipality, I feel for the residents. It makes me angry. It makes me really say, but can't we come to our senses and establish an effective government without the ANC? And Johannesburg, we've had 3 really embarrassing council meetings. At least Tshwane, they've had disturbances. The risks are not as high, but they are there because our government, as much as a majority, but very thin margin. So people of South Africa, we need to really be open with them. We are going to really experience turbulences because politicians are there for their own stomach. They've got absolutely nothing to do with the welfare of the residents, and they're taking us for granted because people are happy to go into a restaurant, as I say, go and have prawns and a bottle of 10,000 rands or whatever, and think that they are solving the country's problems at these dinner parties and these restaurant discussions and blaming politicians. I think until such time that I think all of us as South Africans can take interest in politics. You don't have to be stupid like me and Bongani, where we are facing this bull by the horn. We deciding to, but you can play another role. Please go out and vote. Please make it your responsibility to teach your family around obviously holding government accountable while you're running your business or your surgery or whatever business that you are doing. And please care about your neighbor, care about your fellow South Africans. They might not really look like you. I think you cannot really be comfortable with yourself when you live in a country with 46% unemployment rate, in a country where 74% of the youth are unemployed, a country where 80% of public schools are dysfunctional, where a country where the borders are the most porous in the world, and you say, no, this has got nothing to do with me, and I don't like politics, and I don't want to be a politician, then you must know one day, unfortunately, it's going to catch up with you.
Now, in a closing note, clearly Bongani is a great acquisition for ActionSA, as we said early on, not like this is just a football team and we need acquisitions.
but I did put it in football terms to South Africans. What Herman is trying to do, Herman is building the Sundowns of South Africa.
Good luck. Maybe you can get Pitso back here and you can help.
Yeah, no, we've...
But a lot of people, I suppose, are looking at you and wondering where you are going to fit in the picture. Is that something we can get more information on, or at this stage, or are you just going around doing a lot of interviews?
At this stage, that's exactly what I'm doing. And also, just I've been enjoying with a few of the engaging with a few of MMCs, just relaying my experience and just being a support resource towards them as well. And for the first time, just being on the outside and looking in is giving me a different perspective and a different appreciation. So, and going where members are calling, they're wanting to speak to me. In my own community in Midvaal, I've been experiencing a number of calls, unprecedented. And I must also share with them, and part of the excitement in the community has been, it started off as an irritation. People thought, were confused that just after they'd voted me to be mayor again, I soon left. They didn't realize that they were not voting for me. So the conversation started from their frustration that they voted for me, now I left a month later, to them saying, okay, now we want to follow you wherever you're going. So it's been quite an exciting that the community in Midvaal really wants to follow in the Greater Vaal as well. So I think there's excitement about people can sense what is going to happen in our country, and also want to get themselves in the party which is actually going to deliver on aspirations, in a party which they feel represents them, resonates with them, and they share a joint irritation with the status quo.
I think, can I just really come here? One of my biggest excitement with Bongani, and I think he's the one who make this public. As much as ActionSA, we run primaries. You remember, for you to be a premier candidate, you've got to throw your head in the ring. We go through the primaries, and our members and the people of Gauteng will then decide through this primary system. But what I'm excited about, and I'm going to do everything possible to get people of ActionSA to support Bongani to be our premier for Gauteng. You can imagine Gauteng under Bongani Baloyi. It excites me because it says ActionSA is going to deliver Gauteng. And you can imagine once we've got Gauteng under him, that for me, it excites me. At his age, coming out now with local government, 10-year local government experience, now to being the premier of the economic heartland of our country. I mean, the future is great for him. He's 36 or so, so he's still a baby. So I think, but with massive experience. So that's really, for me, I'm excited. I can't wait for 2024 as a resident of Johannesburg and as a premier, having Bongani as a premier of Gauteng. And I hope ActionSA's are going to join me on this. And I'm really pleased, apologize profoundly to our members that they mustn't say I'm favoring Bongani. I think I have every reason to do it so that I think we can have a functional government. This young man has proven beyond any reasonable doubt that he's the right candidate. But at the end of the day, we leave it to the primaries. But please allow me to also have to express my own personal feelings. I must not really be oppressed. I was oppressed more than half of my life. Please allow me to also express my views.
So you see, ladies and gentlemen, the national and provincial election campaigning started today on the State of the Nation webinar. And I think it's a great way to leave off, because obviously, as we've said before, this is the next big thing. We see a government that seems to have given up on governing, right? I think it's safe to say there is nobody there. This country is absolutely on autopilot. We just got to hope that the coordinates are put in to at least get us to the airport. But 2 years' time, we're going to see massive changes in South Africa. There is little doubt that ActionSA are going to be part of that picture, right? There's great appeal. There's great need for their voice. We've heard from them today, and I would like to profusely thank Herman Mashaba for answering my calls and coming through when you do. Don't turn your phone off, And Bongani Baloyi, I haven't got your number yet, but you're not leaving without giving it to me. But thank you so much for making yourselves available.
Thank you. Thank you.
and for answering the questions. And best of luck in all your endeavors. And we're going to be monitoring and reporting to everybody on it. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
you.
so much. I
Fantastic.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.